You pathetic old woman. You're nothing but a burden. Broke, useless, and taking up space in my house. Rachel's voice cut through me like a blade as she towered over me in my own kitchen. Maybe it's time we put you somewhere more suitable for someone of your means. That's when the doorbell rang. A man in an expensive suit stood on my porch, briefcase in hand, looking directly at me. Mrs. Margaret Coleman, I'm attorney Harrison Blake. I have urgent news about your Aunt Victoria's estate. You've inherited $2.3 million. dollars. The color drained from Rachel's face so fast I thought she might faint right there on my kitchen floor. But before I tell you how this moment changed everything, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. My name is Margaret Coleman, and I'm 63 years old. For 42 years, I built something beautiful with my late husband, Robert. We started Coleman's Catering from nothing. Just me, him, and a dream to bring families together over good food. Robert would handle the business side while I created magic in the kitchen. We served weddings, anniversaries, graduations, and every celebration that mattered in our small town. Our little company grew into the most trusted catering service for 3 counties. Robert passed away 18 months ago after a sudden heart attack. The grief nearly destroyed me. We'd been together since I was 19, and suddenly I was navigating life alone for the first time. My health started declining. Diabetes, high blood pressure, and arthritis made simple tasks feel impossible some days. My son Daniel, 35, and my only child, suggested that he and his wife Rachel move into my house to help me manage everything. It seemed like a blessing at the time. Rachel had been in our family for 5 years, and I'd tried so hard to love her like a daughter. She was beautiful, charming when she wanted to be, and Daniel was completely smitten. But there was always something cold behind her eyes that made me uncomfortable. Robert used to say I was being too critical, that I needed to give her more chances. Maybe he was right, or maybe he just saw what he wanted to see. At first, having them in the house felt comforting. Rachel would drive me to doctor appointments and help with grocery shopping. Daniel took over the heavier yard work that I could no longer manage. But slowly, things started to change in ways that made my stomach twist with worry. It began with small comments. Margaret, you left the stove on again. That's so dangerous at your age. Or, I found you wandering around the house last night looking confused. Maybe we should talk to your doctor about your memory. The thing is, I never left the stove on, and I wasn't wandering confused. I was getting water because my medication makes me thirsty. But when I tried to defend myself, Daniel would get this worried look and side with his wife. Then Rachel started taking over the finances. It's too stressful for you to handle all these bills and bank statements, she said sweetly, taking the checkbook from my hands. Let me help make your life easier. Within a month, I didn't have access to any of my own accounts. When I asked to see the statements, she'd show me confusing paperwork and say things like, "See how little money is left? We really need to start making some hard decisions about your future." That's when I realized something was terribly wrong. I started noticing that my catering business checks were going to a different address. When I asked Rachel about it, she claimed the bank must have made an error and she'd look into it. But weeks passed and nothing changed. My longtime clients started calling the house asking why their deposits were being returned and their events canceled. Rachel would answer the phone and tell them I was no longer taking bookings due to my declining health. But I never said that, I told Daniel one evening after dinner. Mrs. E. Pattison has used our catering for every family event for 15 years. Why would Rachel cancel her daughter's wedding reception? Daniel's face hardened. Mom, you're getting confused again. Remember what the doctor said about stress affecting your memory? Rachel is trying to protect you from overworking yourself. But I could see doubt flickering in his eyes, even as he said the words. The isolation came next. Rachel started screening my phone calls and visitors. Your friend Betty called, but I told her you weren't feeling well enough for company, she'd say. Or, the ladies from church wanted to visit, but you need your rest. Gradually, my world became smaller and smaller until it was just the three of us in that house. And I felt more alone than ever. What I discovered next left me speechless. I found documents in Rachel's purse while she was in the shower, legal papers transferring ownership of Coleman's Catering to her name. My signature was on every page, but I had no memory of signing anything. The handwriting looked close to mine, but something felt off about the way certain letters were formed. My hands shook as I photographed the papers with my phone. I'd learned enough about technology over the years to know this was evidence of something terrible. But when I confronted Rachel that evening, she had an answer ready. Oh, Margaret, you signed those months ago when you were having those bad days after Robert's funeral. Don't you remember? You said you wanted to make sure the business would be taken care of if something happened to you. She spoke so sweetly, so convincingly, that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. But I knew my own mind, and I knew I would never sign away the business Robert and I built together without a real conversation with Daniel first. That's when I started keeping a secret journal, writing down everything that happened each day so I could trust my own memories. The entries painted a terrifying picture. Rachel was systematically isolating me, controlling my finances, and stealing my business. But every time I tried to talk to Daniel, she was right there with medical concerns and documentation of my declining mental state. She'd schedule doctor appointments without telling me and somehow convince the physicians that I was having memory problems. Then came the morning that changed everything. I'd been feeling particularly clear headed and decided to make myself breakfast before Rachel woke up. I was standing at the stove making scrambled eggs when she stormed into the kitchen in her bathrobe, hair wild and eyes blazing. What are you doing? She screamed. You could burn the house down. This is exactly what I've been talking about. You're not safe living independently anymore. I turned to face her calmly. Rachel, I've been cooking for over 40 years. I think I can manage scrambled eggs. That's when her mask completely slipped. You think you know everything, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, you pathetic old woman. You're nothing but a burden, broke, useless, and taking up space in my house. I've worked too hard getting control of everything to let you ruin it now. Maybe it's time we put you somewhere more suitable for someone of your means. The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. This was the woman I'd tried to love like a daughter, showing me exactly what she thought of me. But before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I could see a distinguished man in an expensive navy suit holding a leather briefcase. Something about his posture suggested this wasn't a social call. Rachel tried to push past me. I'll handle this, she said, but I was already walking to the door. Mrs. Margaret Coleman? The man asked when I opened it. He had kind gray eyes and spoke with the careful precision of someone used to delivering important news. I'm Attorney Harrison Blake from Blake and Associates in the state capitol. I have urgent news about your Aunt Victoria's estate. My heart stopped. Aunt Victoria, my father's sister who moved to California when I was young. We'd exchanged Christmas cards over the years, but I hadn't seen her in decades. I'm afraid I have some sad news, Attorney Blake continued. Your aunt passed away 3 weeks ago. However, I also have some very significant news. You've inherited her entire estate, valued at approximately $2.3 million. dollars. The words hit me like a physical blow. Behind me, I heard Rachel's sharp intake of breath. That's impossible, she said, pushing forward. Margaret doesn't have any wealthy relatives. Are you sure you have the right person? Attorney Blake looked at her with professional cool, then back to me. Mrs. Coleman, your aunt was very specific in her will. She left detailed instructions about your identity and even included family photographs to ensure there would be no confusion. She also left a personal letter explaining why she chose you as her sole heir. Rachel's face had gone white as paper. But but Margaret is broke. She doesn't have anything. I manage all her finances, and there's barely enough to cover her medical expenses. The attorney's eyebrows rose slightly. I see, Mrs. Coleman. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. There are some concerning elements to your aunt's letter that I think you need to hear. We went into my living room. My living room, I realized with sudden clarity, while Rachel hovered in the doorway like a predator waiting to pounce. Attorney Blake opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick envelope sealed with wax. Your Aunt Victoria made her fortune in real estate investment in California, he explained. But more importantly, she hired a private investigator 6 months ago to check on your well being after she stopped receiving your annual Christmas cards. He paused, meaningfully. The investigator's report raised some serious red flags about potential financial elder abuse. Rachel stepped forward. Now, wait just a minute. I've been taking care of Margaret out of the goodness of my heart. She's been having memory problems and. Ma'am, Attorney Blake interrupted firmly, I need to speak with Mrs. Coleman alone. This is a legal matter concerning her inheritance, and she has the right to privacy. For a moment, I thought Rachel might refuse to leave. Her face cycled through emotions: shock, anger, fear, and finally, desperate calculation. I'm calling Daniel, she said finally. He needs to know about this. As soon as she left the room, Attorney Blake leaned forward. Mrs. Coleman, I need to ask you some direct questions. Have you signed any legal documents recently transferring ownership of property or business assets to your daughter-in-law? The relief of finally having someone ask the right questions brought tears to my eyes. Yes, but I don't remember signing them. She claims I did it during a confused period after my husband's death, but I know that's not true. He nodded grimly. The private investigator documented several concerning patterns: bank account changes, business ownership transfers, and isolation from your social support network. Your aunt suspected you were being financially abused and wanted to ensure you had resources to protect yourself. That's when Daniel burst through the front door, with Rachel right behind him. Mom, what's going on? Rachel says there's some lawyer here claiming you inherited millions of dollars. Attorney Blake stood and extended his hand. You must be Daniel Coleman. I'm Harrison Blake, and I'm here because your mother has inherited her Aunt Victoria's estate. Daniel looked confused. But Aunt Victoria never had any money. She was just Dad's eccentric sister, who lived in some tiny apartment in California. Actually, Attorney Blake said carefully, your great aunt owned 17 rental properties in prime California real estate markets. She lived modestly by choice, but she was quite wealthy, and she left everything to your mother because she was concerned about your mother's current living situation. I watched Rachel's face as the reality sank in. All her manipulation, all her careful planning to steal my life away. And now there was more money than she'd ever dreamed of, completely beyond her reach. This is ridiculous, Rachel said, her voice rising. Margaret can't handle that kind of money. She can barely remember to take her medication. I should be appointed as her financial guardian to protect her from making mistakes. Attorney Blake's expression grew stern. Mrs. Coleman, the private investigator your aunt hired, documented extensive evidence of potential financial elder abuse. There are forged signatures, unauthorized account transfers, and business assets moved without proper legal representation for the original owner. I'm legally obligated to report these findings to Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney's Office. The room went completely silent, except for the ticking of Robert's old grandfather clock in the corner. Rachel's face had gone from white to a sickly green color. Daniel stared at his wife with growing horror as the pieces fell into place. Rachel, Daniel said slowly, is this true? Have you been stealing from my mother? I. I was protecting her. Rachel's composure finally cracked completely. She was going to lose everything anyway. The business was failing and she was making terrible decisions. I was saving what I could before she destroyed it all. By forging her signature and stealing her company? Daniel's voice was barely controlled. Attorney Blake withdrew another folder from his briefcase. I have copies of all the original business registration documents, Mrs. Coleman. Your aunt's investigator was very thorough. We can begin the process of reversing the unauthorized transfers immediately. Rachel made one last desperate play. You can't trust her to handle millions of dollars. Look at her. She's old. She's confused. She needs someone to make decisions for her. I stood up slowly, feeling strength flow back into my body for the first time in months. Rachel, I may be 63 years old, but I built a successful business from nothing and ran it for 4 decades. I raised a son, managed a household, and survived losing my husband of 42 years. The only thing I couldn't handle was trusting you. Daniel stepped away from his wife like she was toxic. Mom, I'm so sorry. I thought. She convinced me that you were getting confused, that your health was declining. I should have listened to my instincts. Within a week, Rachel was facing multiple felony charges for elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. Daniel filed for divorce and moved into his own apartment, unable to look at the woman who had manipulated both of us so completely. The district attorney's office was very interested in the evidence Attorney Blake provided, especially since Rachel had been stealing from other elderly clients she'd met through her part-time job at the senior center. I used part of my inheritance to hire the best legal team in the state to undo all of Rachel's financial manipulations. Coleman's catering was returned to my ownership, and I discovered she'd been embezzling from the business accounts for over a year. The total amount she stole was more than $80,000, money I thought had been lost to poor business decisions during my grief. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my voice. I'd almost let Rachel convince me that I was incompetent, that my memories couldn't be trusted, that my judgment was failing. Instead, I learned that my instincts were right all along. Rachel eventually pleaded guilty to multiple charges and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. She also owed full restitution for everything she'd stolen, which left her financially ruined. Daniel and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship, though it will take time to fully heal from the betrayal we both experienced. As for me, I'm using Aunt Victoria's inheritance wisely. I've modernized Coleman's catering with new equipment and hired additional staff so I can focus on the creative side I love most. I've also set up a foundation to help other elderly people who are experiencing financial abuse because I learned that what happened to me is far more common than anyone wants to admit. The most important lesson I learned is this: trust your instincts, especially when someone is trying to convince you that your own mind can't be trusted. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Age doesn't make us incompetent, it makes us experienced. And experience is something worth fighting for. Don't let anyone steal your voice, your dignity, or your life story. You are stronger than you know, and you deserve to be treated with respect no matter what your age or circumstances. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts. I read every comment, and your support means everything to me. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and stand up for yourself.